In this video, I'm going to talk about setting up the learning environment. And this is probably the most important thing you're going to do to make your home peaceful and to make a preschool that is low maintenance for you. So really the first thing that you need to do is kind of pick a space that you're going to use, because there does have to be a dedicated place for activities for your child to access, and a comfortable couch for reading, and a table and chairs to sit at. And one of the first things that we could actually even talk about in this idea of setting up a space for your child to learn is the importance of what you put in it. There's a book that I'm reading by Kim John Payne called Simplicity Parenting. And he says in here that less is more. He says a smaller, more manageable quantity of toys even invites deeper play and engagement. An avalanche of toys invites emotional disconnect and a sense of overwhelm. Now, I just read a book by Marie Kondo about the magic art of tidying up, and she talks about removing everything from your space and then only putting back the things which spark joy in your heart. And for preschool, it's really important, like I said, to just have one low shelf that's dedicated to your child's learning and a small kid-sized table and chair for them to work at, so that when you have your activity time that's independent, they can go right over to that shelf, grab the activity, and bring it over to the table. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about some ideas and principles to think about while you're setting up this learning environment. It doesn't have to be a beautiful home. It does have to be a beautiful environment, though. So it might sound oxymoronic, but basically what we have to think about is that we are developing the culture that our children are going to carry into their future life. So that makes it very important to me to get rid of excess stuff, except for books, as you can see. And it also makes it important to me to make sure that the toys and things that we do bring in are good quality, are going to promote some kind of imagination or learning or other educational activity in a sense. And it also makes it very important to me to not have a lot of trash and clutter, because it makes it harder to learn and it makes it harder to focus, especially if you have a child who has any kind of attention difficulties. It's going to be extra important for those kids that your atmosphere is not overly cluttered. Your child is going to have such an easier time focusing if the area has some clear space. Okay? So one principle to think about is just to keep it simple. Like I said, if you've ever even seen a catalog for special needs students, there'll often be a space with some white panels that they can go into to calm themselves. Many parents of special needs have talked about using a tent or a space like that where a child can go into and just be by themselves. And we don't want our child to have to go into a tent to find a calm spot. So, have a couch with a blanket for them to sit on. Have a small table and chairs, like I said. But make sure that your atmosphere and your environment is as simple and clutter-free as possible. Another thing that you want to focus on, like I said, is beauty. An ideal learning environment should be beautiful. And that doesn't have to mean expensive or that you spent all kinds of time and money acquiring stuff, but it does mean that you don't keep broken toys on hand or excess furniture. For us, we hang a map on the wall. We hang very few things, actually. So we have over here, we have a map and then a couple little chore charts and the 10 Commandments. Up above, we've hung some of the best artwork over the last few weeks we'll hang up and then kind of add to that and put them in a binder at the end of the year. So we try to keep our wall space. And then on the other side, we have actually a print and then our jars of sorted materials for writing and drawing and cutting, and a fish. So we have our something to love there. So having a simple environment for learning is really important. It's going to be so much easier for your child to focus on what you want them to do if there aren't a billion choices. For children, they want to have some independence, and it's important that we create an environment where they can be somewhat independent. But the enemy of independence is too many choices and too much stuff. So it's really important that if you have a giant toy box, dump it all out, sort the stuff into smaller baskets or bins, and maybe even put some of it away. It's going to be so much easier for your child to pick the toy they want to play with if there's not a million choices. for toys, we keep a few categories. We keep Playmobiles, Duplos, and some wooden trains. So really just a few categories. And then my daughter has some calico critters and my son has some dinosaurs. So we try to keep things just super simple and categorized, because really, not only is your child learning to be a little tidier when things are categorized like this, they're also learning some really neat upper level learning skills. Jane Healy in the book Your Child's Growing Mind says, after years of studying young children's learning, I'm increasingly convinced that patterns are the key to intelligence. Patterning information really means organizing and associating new information with previously developed mental hooks. Children who can see relationships among things and ideas and thoughts have an easier time organizing their thoughts and ideas. So it's wonderful that something that is as basic as keeping your books in a basket together and keeping your toy trains in a separate bin from your Playmobiles is going to really help with your child's learning. They're learning things, they're learning categorizing skills, they're learning higher level sequencing and things like that, just from something as basic as organizing. Another thing that is important to include in your school area is some opportunity to interact with nature. So for us, we are fortunate enough to live on a small farm, and that does mean tons of extra work. But it also means that my kids right now can be out playing in the grass. There's lots of little dirt spots where they can make mud pies. We do actually keep a little toy kitchen outside now with some pots and pans that they can make mud pies in. So even if you're in a really small suburb or an apartment, getting even a sand table or a bin of sand, some opportunity for your child to have that sensory input that is involved when they're playing in sand or dirt or water or grass or leaves is so important for them. Another idea that you want to include when you're setting up your learning environment is order and structure. So we talked about having a shelf, we talked about categorizing the toys, even getting so detailed as to categorize writing implements. We are trying to transition into better quality writing implements, but instead of having a giant bin full of broken crayons, make sure you just have a small amount of good quality ones. Instead of having, a big leftover wipey container with all the markers and pencils and everything mixed together and broken ones and caps off ones, just take a minute every week to kind of organize and clean up the ones that you have. Get rid of things that are dried up or don't work. It's going to be, like I said, so much easier for your preschooler to be a part of maintaining their environment if it's not overwhelming. It's better to have fewer activities and fewer materials to use, but just have them be well organized. Another thing is just to keep things reasonably clean. And so making sure that at the end of the school day, you and your child work together to make sure the table's cleared off, and have a little trash bin where they can help clean up, and a little child-sized broom and dustpan so they can help sweep up the floor and just keep things tidy.
Emily.
Okay. Emmett is a good editor. He can cut it out, huh, Emmett? So make a way to keep things tidy. Another way to create a peaceful preschool is to unplug. In Waldorf schools, they actually don't use electronic devices until the child is in elementary school. So try to find a way to minimize or eliminate electronic devices. That would mean, just a movie if you're desperate. I know there are times with preschoolers where you just need to have a shower and you need to know that they're safe, and putting on a movie can feel like just like they're stuck and they're not going to move anywhere. And so, making electronics very minimal though. When you're out shopping with your child, instead of handing them your iPhone and letting them play a game, how about chatting with them, or bringing along a snack that they can eat and then having them help you shop, or even better, if necessary, leaving them at home with their daddy. So finding ways to minimize electronics, because what they do is they promote one-dimensional learning. So I know sometimes it feels like, oh, they're learning something, but it's really a very small bit of their sensory input that's involved. So, when your child is using sandpaper letters or playing with Play-Doh or painting or drawing or even looking at a book. There's a lot more of their body involved in that. And so there's a lot more input and a lot more learning happening. Also, make sure that you're not on your phone during times that you have dedicated to working with your children. Make sure that you have your phone put away somewhere where it's not easy to get at so that you're not constantly distracted. It's important for our young children's development that we give them plenty of eye-to-eye contact, plenty of time to talk, lots of reading out loud together. And so make sure that your phone isn't a constant distraction by putting it away somewhere while you're working with them. One study from the American psychologists, researchers found that children watch an average of 40 hours of TV a week, and that excessive television viewing is linked to lower intelligence. So, the hours when your child is sitting in front of the TV or computer are times when they're not really experiencing life, they're not really learning to create things, not really using their own imagination. So be really careful that TV doesn't take over your home. Also, another thing I loved about Simplicity Parenting is he talked a lot about the importance of keeping your children to some degree innocent. He talked about not watching serious and sad news programs in front of your child, not watching even shows with mature themes, because they do kind of get your heart racing. So think about what they're doing to your small child when they're sitting there watching, somebody get killed in a train wreck on the TV or something like that. There's some really serious stuff that our children don't need to be exposed to yet. We can give them a little bit more time to be innocent and childlike and carefree before they have to face some of the more grim realities of life. There's also, it's interesting, there's some, if you've ever noticed, if you have watched an intense movie with your children, how their behavior is afterwards. Children are so imitative. So even an innocent cartoon, such as like Kung Fu Panda or any Disney cartoon, it might seem innocent, but there's often pretty intense battle scenes or intense themes, and your child's going to often imitate what they have seen. So it is really important that the shows that your small children are watching are shows that you want them to imitate in real life, and not that many of them fall into that category. So, and we still, even with older children, we still try to be careful what our children watch, because we only have one chance to create the appetites in our children. We only have one chance to create the culture and the vision and the ideals that they are going to live with throughout their life. And so we really want to make the most of this opportunity that we have. And then the last thing I want to talk about is just, I'm going to have a list for you that you can print out of some of the materials that you'd want to have on hand. But for sure, a child-sized table and chairs is important, a shelf that your child can reach, some small trays and little containers for putting activities in would be really useful for sorting things, because what we want our children to be able to do is walk over to a shelf, pick up an activity off the shelf and take it to their table and do it, so they're not dropping things or having to like gather all kinds of stuff together. We want it set up and gathered for them to make learning really smooth. Also, some child-sized cleaning products. We have found a few things by Norwex, like a dusting mitt that's a really neat. A child would enjoy putting on that mitt and dusting your furniture, and it doesn't take any chemicals. Also, we mix up our own cleaners. We'll put some water and vinegar and essential oils. Oregano is good for disinfectant if you just use a little bit, or lavender is a really nice mild cleaner. So we put those in a spray bottle, and then our young children can just have at it spraying and cleaning windows or tables, and that's always such an enjoyable activity for them, as well as being very good for their motor skills. All that squeezing action really works on their hand, their fine motor skills, and the rubbing, sort of like the Karate Kid, wax on, wax off. Also, some well-made art supplies. It'd be really nice if you could gather like some Stockmar crayons. Rembrandt is a really nice brand of colored pencil, some good watercolor paints and clay. And if you only can get one of those and then go for Crayola in the other areas, maybe start with that and just kind of build up for Christmas or birthdays. Work on accumulating some of these better quality products. You can easily make your own Play-Doh, and Play-Doh is such a great activity for learning your letters and for using those fine motor skills again. Also, a sandpaper alphabet. We have made our own using glitter glue and index cards. So you can make something like that where they can use their fingers to trace the letters and have that good sensory input while they're tracing the letters. But it'd be great to have some kind of sandpaper alphabet, and as well as having a movable alphabet. So as they do learn their letters, they can start to put words together. And then also, we like having some things on hand for counting. So maybe a Lori makes puzzles that are really good for long wear. If you can find any of the Montessori math materials, are beautiful and they'll last a long time. They're well made. So I am so excited about seeing what kind of environments you can put together. And I'd love to have you tag them Heavenly Mothering in Instagram as you put your environment together. And also there's several Montessori Instagrams if you're looking for extra inspiration on setting up your Montessori. Look in the hashtags of Montessori or Reggio Emilia. There are some beautiful ideas for setting up a really good environment for your child to learn in. And once you have that environment set up and you're decluttered, you don't have a lot of extra toys and books and junk in there, you're going to have a really fun time getting in there with your child and learning with them. So thank you for joining. And the next, we're going to be talking about some scheduling ideas.